So are you one of the 56% of people over 55 who have a written will? Are you thinking how responsible you are to actually have a will? But here's the question. When was the last time you reviewed your will? If you looked at it again today, would you be surprised by the number of updates you need to add or revise to your will? Hi, I'm Gail Jervis, and welcome to Life After 65. As an avid reader and researcher, I've recently made it my mission to explore all the ways that my husband and I can live healthier, happier, and more fulfilling lives as we learn to redefine aging. I started this channel to share what I'm learning with anyone else who has that same goal. Now, a number of years ago, when my adult son and daughter were newly married, they would tease one of their aunts and uncles about moving in with them if mom and dad died. Their spouses would join in the laughter, saying that, yeah, they'd be only too happy to go live with them also. My husband and I kept listening and laughing during this bantering. However, when our adult children began having their own children, we asked them, could we book appointments for you with a lawyer that we know so that we all can see a lawyer about a will? My husband and I also updated our wills, and our adult children now had wills that designated especially what was important to my husband and me was who was going to get their children if something happened to them. But our update was actually 20 years ago, and we haven't since looked at our wills. Now, we obviously do need to review our wills. So in this week's episode, I'm going to be sharing 11 questions that will hopefully be helpful if you are also needing to review your will. And these questions will probably help you realize that, yeah, maybe I do need to review a will. Number one, who do you have as your executor? In our case, our son and daughter are the executors. But if your will is a little more complicated, or if there's strained relations between the brother and sister, you may decide to choose another executor other than your children. In the instance of Alan Thicke's estate, his two sons were both executors. However, 2 years after his death, their stepmother had to make a justified claim to the court that they were spending money from his trust and had yet to hand out the portion of inheritance that was supposed to go to her. Also, when you consider your executor, you may realize that the person you assigned is actually now dead or has moved to another country. Or number two, is anyone missing in your will? In our case, we updated our wills when our grandchildren gave us grandchildren. But if you have allotted a sum of money to your grandchildren, make sure all their names are included, since there may have been some grandchildren born since you wrote your will. Kobe Bryant, he's a good reminder why this is so important to review our wills. He actually had an estate plan, and he had a plan that would pass his wealth to his family members. However, he failed to update his estate plan after the birth of his daughter, who was just 6 months old at the time of his death. So the co-trustees of the Kobe Bryant Trust had to petition the court to modify Kobe's trust to add this little child as a beneficiary. Unfortunately, the mistake not only necessitated legal fees, it eliminated the privacy aspect of his estate plan because the trust and its terms are on public record. And apparently when Kobe Bryant died, his mother-in-law alleged that Kobe promised to take care of her for the rest of her life. If that was true, nothing could be done since Kobe did not add her to his estate plan, and therefore she didn't receive anything. Third question, do you have some special mementos or family heirlooms you want to give to special people? You know, when I was going through a box of photos of my mother-in-law's, I discovered that on the back of a framed photo, she had written that it was supposed to be given to one of her grandchildren. That could so easily have been missed. Or perhaps you've already given some of those family heirlooms to particular people, and those items need to be taken out of your will. I have a friend who was trying to go through his aunt's will, and he was having a terrible time because some of those items she had already given away, and he still had to track them down to make sure also that they were being given to the people that were said in the will. So that's another reason, is make sure that you have reviewed all the so-called heirlooms, anything that's special in your will, and make sure that you have specified who is supposed to be receiving them. Now, 4, if you have remarried and you have a blended family, does your will clarify who receives your estate? Alan Thicke, a Canadian actor and star of the sitcom Growing Pains, he died in 2016. Well, he had a will, but his 2 sons panicked, assuming that his 3rd wife wouldn't honor her prenuptial agreement and that she would take control of the $16 million estate. A judge did reject their petition since he found that there was no indication that she was going to challenge the prenuptial agreement. But again, you have all those things clearly stated so there won't be all this confusion. And number 5, does your will have any awkward phrasing which could lead to some unintended consequences? For example, when you first wrote your will, you may have had a significant estate of $5 million that's been now dwindled after 20 years of living in retirement to, say, that's $3 million. Well, if you said in your will that $1 million will go to a particular charity and the rest to your children, now your children will get $2 million divided up rather than the $4 million that you first thought they would receive. That may still be what you want, but you may want to change some numbers. Or number 6, check what you plan on giving to various loved ones. You may think you're being quite generous, giving a particular stock or a bank account to a particular child, but over time you may have sold that particular stock, or its value may have dropped significantly. That person may be left with nothing or significantly less than other loved ones, and that's not what you wanted. And number 8, have you included any charities in your will? Make sure this gift will qualify for a tax reduction. And have you included the charity's full name and address so there's no confusion again? And number 9, do you have a safe place to keep your will? Do you have a fireproof box, or do you keep it in a safety deposit box at the bank? Does your executor have a copy of the will? And number 10, does your executor know where you keep your actual will? And number 11, if you have children, do they already know what family heirlooms are going to each child or relative or friend? Do they have a general understanding, in other words, of what is in the will? So there won't be the surprises which can cause a lot of resentment sometimes. And number 11, who are the witnesses to your will? In Canada, you don't have to get your will notarized to make it valid. You also don't need a notary public or lawyer to act as a witness to your will. However, check to see if you're a province or state, if you live in the United States or Canada, obviously, what is required. Is a witness required to sign a document that confirms that you were there witnessing the signing of your will? And this document affidavit may have to be sworn in front of a commissioner or notary public to be valid. And this affidavit will be submitted to the court along with the will after you passed away. Now, if there are any disagreements over the will, these witnesses may be invited to testify in court over the will's legitimacy. By the way, please add any other questions you think would be helpful when a person reviews their will in the comments below. And if you decided to subscribe to my channel, please indicate that in the comments below so that I can thank you. Now, besides reviewing your will, do you have a living will? If not, let me tell you why you may want one. Number 1, a living will helps you articulate your preferences regarding medical treatments and interventions, ensuring that healthcare providers follow your wishes if you are unable to communicate or make decisions for yourself. Number 2, having a living will outlines your preferences for end-of-life care. 3, having a living will can alleviate the emotional burden on family members by providing clear guidance on your preferences, preventing potential conflicts among the family members about the appropriate course of action. I always remember my mom saying that she saw her mom in extreme pain, slowly dying, asking to die, but her two brothers kept refusing to take off some of the necessary hospital equipment to allow her to die. But if something had been said to them ahead of time, if something had been written ahead of time, they wouldn't have gone through that. 4, having a living will help you articulate what medical interventions or treatments you may want or not want, even during a surgery or any other medical interventions due to prolonged suffering. When I was being prepared for hip replacement, I had to take this designation form and go through what I did and didn't want done. If there were any surgical complications with my doctor, she would check things off and sign it. Number 5, creating a living will empowers you to take control of your healthcare decisions, ensuring that your personal beliefs and values are respected during those critical moments. A final and sobering decision is who you will want as a power of attorney if you need to designate someone to make decisions for you that can include medical, financial, or legal. If you have a living partner, that person will most likely have the power of attorney. But if you are alone, then you will want to choose a responsible sibling, a responsible child, a responsible friend, someone whom you can trust. And trusting this individual is huge, since you are basically giving this person rights to manage your finances. A friend of ours told us of these 2 younger sisters who were taking care of their older sister. And while they had power of attorney, they divided the money between the 2 of them. So when this woman died, another sister who was in the will had to get these 2 sisters to give her a rightful third of the estate. I'd like to conclude this episode by sharing with you what some people have thought was important enough to include in their will. Now, Alfred Hitchcock, famous for his horror films, incorporated his dark sense of humor into his will. He requested that his gravestone bear the inscription, "This is what we do to people who interrupt our naps." Or Frank Sinatra added a provision in his will requesting a bottle of Jack Daniels, a pack of Camel cigarettes, and a Zippo lighter to be buried with him. Star Trek actor Leonard Nimoy, famous for his role as Spock, specified that his family at his funeral should commemorate his life with a Vulcan salute instead of a traditional handshake or hug. And here's 5 humorous or unusual requests found in the wills of famous people. In his will, Napoleon Bonaparte requested that his head be shaved and his hair divided among his friends. Although not necessarily funny in intent, this unusual request highlights that Napoleon's interest in leaving a personal memento behind. Benjamin Franklin's will included a humorous clause regarding his daughter's preference for fine jewelry. He left her a portrait frame with 400 diamonds that was inside the frame, but stipulated that she should not use the diamonds to make jewelry. Was this a lighthearted jab at her taste in jewelry? And number 4, the famous escape artist Harry Houdini. He left instructions in his will for his wife to hold an annual seance on the anniversary of his death to see if he could communicate from the afterlife. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out the videos on the screen for hopefully more great content.